Right, so here I have the first page of the practice test for the trimester 1 exam. I'm going to make a video on each page. I think I have 5 pages altogether. So let's go through it one at a time. I suggest you try it on your own. If you're studying this, it might not be so helpful. You really have to do some questions by yourself. But the main thing for some of you is the instructions. So if English is not your first language, then you might have trouble understanding the instructions. So this is why I've put together a video so that when you see me do some of these questions, you know exactly what I'm asking for. So let's look at page 1. We'll get page 1 done, and then I'll make a video for page 2, 3, 4, and so forth. So here we go, page 1. Give an example of each number type. So you have to know what these symbols are. And I did have them in the notes, so you can check your notes. So R, this here is a real number. All right. Oh, let me just change my pen. So here, this here is what we call a real number, and I'll even put it in here. This is called a real number. All right. So here we're looking for a real number. Z is called an integer, right? So if you need to look this up in your translator, you can. This is called a natural number, N. All right. And finally, Q is we call a rational number. So you have to know these words and the symbols. So the first thing is that a real number is any number that you can think of. It doesn't matter decimal, fraction, it doesn't matter positive, negative. So for me, I'm going to pick something simple. I'm going to pick 3 because it's a number. So R, you can pick any number that you can think of, all right? Now, an integer has to be a positive or negative whole number. So some examples of integers, and I'll give you a few, could be -2. You could have 4. If I want, I can make it a little bit tricky. I could say square root of 16. So if you put that into your calculator, you could get 4 as well. So these are all numbers that if you look at them, they're whole numbers, no decimals, all right? And it can be positive and negative. The next one is natural numbers. And so this is any numbers that start from 1, 2, 3, all the way to infinity. So this natural numbers are whole numbers, and there's no negatives and no fractions, no decimals. So here's some examples of natural numbers. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They call them counting numbers. And then finally, the Q is rational because these are going to be any number that can be written as a fraction. So A over B. So a fraction could be 1/2. Another example of a rational number could be 5, because you can write 5 like 5 over 1. So all whole numbers can be a rational number. So here's some examples of these. So you have to make sure you know these symbols. Okay. Next question here. List the factor pairs of 32. So you need to put them together as pairs. So you need 2 of them together. So for example, you have to know what the word factor is. So 1 pair of 32 is 1 and 32, because 1 times 32 gives you 32. So let's think of a few other ones, okay? What else gives 32? Well, we know that 2 times 16 gives 32. So that's another factor pair. All right. So here's 1 pair. Here's 2 pairs. Let's think of another one. What next? What are some other factors of 32? Well, I know that 4 times 8 gives 32. So there you go. I have a third factor pair. So there's 3 here. Can you think of any other numbers that give you 32? 1 and 32, 2 and 16, 4 and 8. And I believe that's it. So 32 has 3 factor pairs. So that's what you had to do here. If they ask you for factor pairs, I want you to put them together, like, and I'll even put it in a different color so you do it right. Okay, here I want you to put 1 and 32, 2 and 16, 4 and 8. So you have to do that together, okay? So this requires you to know your multiplication tables. Next question. Write in prime factor form. All right. So if they ask you to do this, the first thing you should do is put your line here, okay? And then start dividing 60 by prime numbers. So if you don't know what this word is, please look it up. Prime. Some examples of prime numbers are 3, 5, 7, 13, 17. These are all prime numbers, okay? So let's start off with the easiest prime number, 2. So 60 divided by 2 is 30. 30 divided by 2 is 15. The next number I can divide by a prime number is 3. So 15 divided by 3 is 5. And finally, 5 divided by 5 is 1. And that's where we stop. So when you have a 1 here, we can stop. And now I want to write it as a factor prime number. So I have 2 2s. So I have 2 squared, because there's 2 of them, times by, I have 1 3, times by, I have 1 5. So this here is your final answer. This is what I want to see on your test if I ask you to write in prime factor form. Okay? That's what you have to do. Okay? Next question. Lowest common multiple. LCM. Lowest common multiple. LCM. Okay? So when we want to do the LCM, what I suggest you do is you put a 12 here, put the 14 here, and you make your line like this. And we're going to do something similar to above. Okay? And what I'm going to do is going to do the same thing as we did above here. So I'm going to divide by 2, and I get 6. Divide by 2, I get 3. And I divide by 3, I get 1. So now I'm at the very end. I'm at my 1, just like I had here at my 1. And I'm going to do the same thing with 14. So I'm going to divide it by 2. I get 7. And I divide it by 7 because that's the only prime number, and I get 1. And now I have both of them like so. All right. So that's the first step when you have to find the LCM. The second step is this. You put them beside each other. Oh, let me just change color. Let's see. So I have, for 12, I have 2 times 2 times 3. And then for 14, I have, now, if you have one of them that matches, so I have a 2 here and a 2 here. So I'm going to put the 1 underneath it like so, because I have a match. And 7, look, there's no 7s up here, so I have to put the 7 in a different spot. Okay? And when I do that, I'm going to put my little line here. And notice I have a 2 here, so I'm going to put, from here I have a 2. From this column here, I have a 2. From this column here, I have a 3. And then from this column here, I have a 7. And they're all going to be multiplied against each other. And now all you need to do is multiply these with your calculator. So let's see. 2 times, or let's try, 7 times 3 is 21. Times 2 is 42. Times 2, you should get an answer of 84. So if you multiply that all together, you should get 84 as your final answer. So that's your answer for this question here. All right, so that's how you find the LCM. You have to do it this. So this is step 1, step 2 for both of them, step 1 and step 2, and step 3, and finally step 4. So 4 steps that you have to know. Okay. So the next one we're going to do is find the highest common factor. So once again, it's going to be similar. I'm going to be 48, 104. I'm going to put my line like so. And I hope I have enough room. Okay. And I'm going to divide by prime numbers again. So divide by 2, I get 24. Divide by 2, I get 12. Divide by 2, I get 6. Divide by 3, I get 2. And divide by 2, I get 1. So 2, 2, 2, 3, 2. So that's what I have for 48. And then I'll do 104. So divide by 2, I get 52. If I divide by 2 again, you should get 26. If I divide by 2 again, I get 13. And then 13 is a prime number, so I have to divide by 13, and I get 1. All right? So I got 1, 1, they're both the same. Now, with the highest common factor, what we need to do is just check to see how many of these do we have that are the same. So I have 1, 2 here and 1, 2 here, so I put a 2 down. I have a second 2 here and a second 2 here, so I put another 2 down because they're in common. They're this. I have a third 2 here, a third 2 here, and so I put another 2 down here. And if I look, I have a 3 and a 2 there and a 13. They are not the same, so I'm done. Now, what is 2 times 2 times 2? We get 8. And then that's our final answer. So that's the highest common factor. So for page 1, that's how we do some of these here. These are typical questions that you might see on the test, so make sure you know how to do them. There'll be more complicated questions, but you can try them out anyways. Okay.